Welcome to See What You Can Brew, the podcast about home brewing community and everything beer in New York City.
Brought to you by Bitter Esters in Brooklyn, New York. We're your hosts, Douglas Amport
and John LaPola.
So, John, my apartment is hot. My AC's broke. It's 95 degrees. There's a heat wave this weekend. Do I have to go brew beer in one of the cooling centers this weekend in New York City, or can I? What can I do?
I'm pretty sure they're setting up areas in the cooling centers where people can brew beer. So no, I think
sense.
That'll be completely fine.
Yeah,
no, of course you can brew beer. On today's show, we'll be speaking with Lance Shaner. He's the co-founder of Omega Yeast, and we'll be talking about the heat-tolerant Norwegian Kveik strains and how these yeast strains are changing both the temperatures and the times that we consider acceptable for making quality beer. So it's a real game changer, these yeasts, and I'm sure a lot of you have tried them. So we're going to be talking to Lance all about the best ways to use them. So heat be damned. You don't have to worry about it.
So first, I think we're going to start off today a little bit by talking about a few of the items happening around New York City and take care of a little bit of housekeeping.
Sounds good.
John, you want to talk about Brewers Choice?
Yeah, Brewers Choice was this awesome event that was hosted by Jimmy Carboni from Beer Sessions Radio. Jimmy's a friend of the store, and it's been really helpful. It was over at Biba in Williamsburg. It was a great time. There were 15 breweries there, and they all featured beers with New York State malt and hops. So it was a bit of a local bore event. There was plenty of food that was made with local ingredients. It was a really great event.
And so, John, you were a judge at this event. Was there anything particularly good?
Well, the funny thing is no real judging happened. When I got there, I just basically hung out with the fellow judges. There was about 7 of us. And it was great to see everybody, especially Ann Becerra. She's known as Ann Likes Beer. She's a Cicerone. B.R. Rolia of Shelton Brothers. She's a friend of the store. Remember B.R.? It was really nice seeing her. I got to hang out with Heather and Ray from St. Cambrinus, Billy from Covenhoven. So, you know,
it was a lot of people we know.
A lot of the New York City beer people, and great beer pouring. There's about 12 breweries, I'd say, all making beers made with local ingredients. Some of the ones that stuck out for me was Keg and Lantern had a Saison that was really great.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Lyons is the head brewer there. He's a friend. And he had a mixed culture homebrew that was particularly good. Yeah, he told me that he actually had this mixed culture yeast banked at Bootleg Biology. So that's actually really cool. And the beer was fantastic. There's a really cool place from upstate called Subversive Malting and Brewing. I had never actually heard of them before. They've just been open for about 4 months. They do all their own malting, which is really neat. So they started out as a malt house. And they have this brewery that a nice Keller beer, but a really nice IPA. I thought, as far as local ingredients, it was one of the better IPAs I've had. But one of the things I think I liked the best, I think my favorite there was from a brewery called West Kills. They had a light lager. It was a corn adjunct lager that had this really nice corn finish, like you were eating a corn cob at the end. And my brother owns an inn in upstate New York, and his inn buys their beer. They knew my brother. That was cool.
Did they serve it with butter? They
did not. No. It did not have any diacetyl. It was really nice. Other cool thing about that is P.J. Clark. I don't know if you remember him, but he's the head brewer. P.J. Clark used to be a local home brewer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, P.J. Yeah, he was in the homebrew sessions for the first for our first show playing harp. So, and then there was from Kent Falls. There was a great session Saison. It was 2.8%. It was fantastic. Our friend Derek Dillinger used to be the head brewer there, but he no longer is, which I found out. But he went on to write books. I really thought that the whole focus on local malts at this event was really great. It was more intimate than the Brewers' Choices from the past, which is kind of neat that everybody was really focused on this local thing. They weren't just going there to get fucked up. So
that's really cool, actually. Yeah,
it's
nice to see all the new products coming out, and that all of these great breweries are making all of this great beer with local ingredients.
And the fact that the farm to brewery license was meant to increase agriculture in New York, and it's working.
It's working, yeah.
And they are making better and better beers every year because of the influence from the breweries and the fact that the farmers and the maltsters are listening to the breweries.
I had some good beer last week, too.
You drink beer? I had no idea.
My girlfriend and I went over to Daleview Brewing over on Nostrand Avenue at Rutland. Chris Ganzi opened up a brewery called Daleview. He's got Daleview, and he's got Daleview Biscuits and Beer, so he does these gluten-free biscuits and chicken. It's actually a really fun little spot over there. He just started, he just got his license maybe 2 months ago, and so he's just starting to roll out his brand new first beers of his beer. He's pouring a couple other his beers, a couple things from local breweries. He's got a beer called My President is Black. He's got a pale ale called Palm of My Hand. It's a lot of really fun stuff coming out. So
where is he located?
He's I forget the exact number. It's on Nostrand Avenue by Rutland. He's between the Sterling Stop and Winthrop.
Crown Heights.
Crown Heights.
Cool.
Yeah. I think that's about it for events. But before we move on, I wanted to say, if you're listening to this and you're not my mom and you're thinking, well, heck, they didn't talk about the all-lacto, extract-only beer tasting I'm hosting on the Subway platform next week. Well, it's probably just because we haven't heard about it. So if you've got something going on in the next couple weeks, next couple months, drop us an email. We'll happily bring it up on the show, and all 3 people that are listening can find out about it.
What would that email be?
Oh, we've got a contact@bitterandesters.com. You can also get us at john@bitterandesters.com or Douglas@bitterandesters.com or John or Douglas at bitterandesters.com.
You're kidding.
I made that an email after the last podcast. Yeah. So just send an email.
A couple other little pieces of business. We have an all-grain class coming up in August, yeast class coming up August 11th. We have some private collection yeasts from Y Yeast. We have Forbidden Fruit, which is the second strain of Hoegaarden.
I'm actually rather excited about Forbidden Fruit. I was sad when they took it off their primary roster. If you take a wit beer and you ferment it, and it just kind of comes out a little funky with the Belgian wit, the Forbidden Fruit's got all the esters and all the deliciousness without any of that weirdness in it. So you don't
a lot
need,
cleaner.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need as much coriander and orange to hide the flavors of the yeast. Yeah, it's fun.
And then we have from Omega Yeast, and we'll be talking to Lance today, is the Goulot. And Goulot is a really cool hybrid strain where they did a hybrid of French Saison and Irish Ale. It has all of the attenuation of French Saison, but none of the phenolics, and then it has all the nice flavors from the Irish Ale. So you can make a brut IPA without having to use any glucoamylase enzymes. You just kind of pitch this stuff in there, and it's going to dry you down like a bone. A bone!
One of our employees, Jack, made a Irish stout with it that was super dry and really
It was
amazing.
really good,
It's really good, yeah.
So
we got a couple contests happening. We've got some messages, and we thought we'd share this contest info real quick here. The first one is the Mobcraft Weirdest Homebrew Competition. Weird beers.
Sounds good.
Yeah, they're looking for entries. We presume it's not BJCP. But they're in Wisconsin, and they need the entries mailed to them between August 5th and August 11th. There's information on the website and a link to their thing.
And then there's a Queen of Beer. This is an advance notice. This is a contest for women identifying brewers. The registration opens September 1st, and the entries will be due late November, early December. Entrants have the opportunity to compete for scholarships to online brewing classes, and the BOS winner will be offered a week-long brewing class. Wow, this is great.
Yeah, it actually sounds really cool.
Details will be on the website, but Queen of Beer. Sounds really cool. And then we also have the 23rd year of the Knickerbocker Battle of the Brews, which is hosted by the Saratoga Thorough Brews and the Albany Brew Crafters. I
actually met these guys at HomebrewCon in person. We've been sponsoring this contest for a few years now.
Yep.
And I finally met them and drank their beers. They made a lot of really good beers. They had a fantastic Pilsner. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Did you go over to their booth?
I probably did. I'm sure I did, but Bitter Esters will be a drop-off point for this. We will announce when you can start dropping things off, but we just want to remind you that the 23rd year of Knickerbocker Battle of the Brews is coming up, the KBOTB.
So Bitter Esters has a monthly beer swap. Some of you know what that is, but basically anybody who wants to can show up, bring a few beers in. We trade them, we drink them. Mostly it's a beer drink. I originally had the idea of a swap. I thought we were going to actually trade beers. It was a good idea, but we just drink everything that shows up.
We've been doing this since 2011, since we opened.
Yeah, 8 years now. So it's been a lot of fun. I don't always get to make it, but we had a fantastic beer swap in July. It was amazing.
It was beyond amazing.
It was beyond amazing. I don't know if I can put into words how it made me feel, but there was cake. They made a cake with our logo on it. It was a celebratory event because of the HomebrewCon, the award that we won.
Homebrew Shop of the Year.
Homebrew Shop of the
Year. In case you haven't heard a million times. So it was Rachel Zeiss and Carrie Sohm were a bit behind the cake, and they actually made us this really nice chocolate cake with bourbon frosting on it. It was fantastic in the shape of our logo, which, I love the plaque from the American Homebrewers Association, but there's something about getting a cake as a present. It was really, really cool. It was so delicious. It was a big deal. We had about 75 people here for that swap.
It was shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, if you've never been here, that's a lot of people in the swap.
It was a lot of people just to have in the store at any one time. So each month we give away a cup. And John, do you want to explain a little bit what that cup's about?
Sure. What we do is we allow the homebrewers to nominate who they think deserve to win the cup, either because they made the best beer or because they made the most interesting beer. They can really decide who they want to nominate. And we get about 4 or 5 people up here with nominations, and then we vote on whose beer was the best. Now, there's a little sad note to this month's cup. One of our earliest supporters of the swap and friend of the store passed away recently. His name is Heath Sobel, and we were very saddened by this, and we decided to dedicate the cup to him from now on. Because he really was such a great guy and a great home brewer. He had won the cup 4 times. It used to be called the Coveted Cup, but it's now called the Heath Sobel Memorial fucking Cup. And we were very happy to do this little thing to honor Heath's memory.
If you knew Heath Sobel, you would get why we called it the Heath Sobel Memorial fucking Cup.
Yes, you would.
He was a great guy.
The person who won at this swap was Scott Aufderheide, who won with his mead. He actually brought an Arnold Palmer mead made with black tea and lemon.
It was so drinkable.
Now, the funny thing about the swap is people always say, how much beer should I bring? Should I bring 6-pack? Should I bring a 9-pack? Whatever. And we're like, 2 or 3 beers. We're doing tastes. We're not drinking pints of beer at a time. So people bring 2 or 3 beers. Sometimes they'll bring like 4 different varieties of the beer. It's really fun, and you get to taste all these beers. Scott brought a keg. He brought a keg of mead.
A whole keg in a granny cart.
And I think from now on, I think everyone has to bring a keg of beer to the swap.
Don't say that, John.
I want to see 70 kegs.
Please do not listen to what John says. Please.
We do it the first Wednesday. The first Thursdays are a little rough for everybody in the store. But it was really a great swap. Even though there was that little element of sadness, there was this great element of joy and celebration over our win. George Zeiss made us this really cool picture that was our logo made out of all of our Instagram photos, which is just amazingly cool. We're going to put it up soon, George. Don't worry about it. We just haven't had anchors put on the wall. And
Barry Wasser put together a amazing collage of all these photos and quotes from the actual
pizza. Yeah, that was really cool.
It was really cool.
Yeah, there were so many good beers. You guys are kicking ass when it comes to beer making.
We could take an hour and a half to just list them all if we were able to remember.
But I was able to grab Scott during all the revelry and throw him in the backyard and interview him a little bit about his Arnold Palmer mead. So
before the mosquitoes got you.
Before the mosquitoes got me. So this is me speaking with Scott at the swap in July of 2019. So tonight we had the first of the Heath Sobel Memorial fucking Cup winners, which is a great honor. And it is Scott Aufderheide. So Scott, tell us what you made.
Yeah, thank you. It is an honor for the Heath Cup, and I made an Arnold Palmer mead. So it's a short mead, only 6%. Just did, a pretty standard fermentation, and in secondary put in a whole bunch of lemons and tea. And it was kind of, it's summer, it's July, so it's supposed to be a nice, refreshing, and yet very alcoholic drink. Because if you're pounding 6%, you're going to have a good time.
When did you add the lemons and the tea?
Tea, I did a cold and hot brew before I fermented, and then after the fermentation was done, I put in the lemons and then a little extra tea because I wanted some more.
Awesome. How long have you been brewing, making mead, that sort of thing?
So I did in college for 2 years, and then after I left, I was kind of bouncing around a lot, so I didn't get to brew at all. And then when I came to New York, I stopped in at Bitter Esters and was able to, gear back up and get the mead train going again. So it's 2.5 years in New York, and it's been a great time, great community here. And I'm actually sorry to leave, but
yeah. So what's up? Where are you going?
I'm going out to LA to work for Disney, actually.
Wow, doing what?
So I'm in software, so I'm going to be supporting all of their feature animation workflows and stuff, and hopefully bring some beer and mead into the office every once in a while.
You brew beer as well, right?
I do, yeah. Just not as much. I do 6 meads a year and maybe 2 beers.
Well, when you're out in California, make sure you hook up with Robert Sherrill.
Oh, absolutely. We might even start Brew Aries 2.0, but that's TBD. TBD.
That's good to know. Well, congratulations on the win, and thank you for your support, and good luck in California. It's pretty freaking awesome.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And again, it's a huge honor to go out like this, and I freaking love the Brew Aries and Bitter Esters.
And we love you. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott, for your awesome mead, and good luck on your travels, man. We really wish you nothing but the best. Make sure you drop into Bitter Esters next time you're in Brooklyn.
We're going to miss you.
We're going to miss you.
So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk to Lance from Omega about brewing with his Kveik Strains.
Kveik
Strains. Oh, I'm the worst.
Yeah, we're going to be, we had the pleasure of being able to talk with him about these Norwegian strains that you can pitch warm and ferment warm. So if you think that you can't ferment during the summer, you're wrong. You can still make saisons. We always thought that brewing warm was going to be saisons, but
after the 15th saison of the summer,
right,
you kind of want that Northeast IPA back. Yeah. So if you don't know who Omega is or who Lance is, Lance Shaner founded Omega Yeast with his partner Mark Schwartz in 2013. They're out of Chicago, Illinois, which makes them a lot closer to us here in Brooklyn, New York, so we can get their product next day, super fresh. The pitches are fantastic. They're great. And he's got a lot of new stuff. He's got a bunch of hybrids, I think we talk a little bit about in this interview.
They have these Norwegian strains, and plus they have a lot of just traditional strains that are really great quality. So,
I think without further ado, let's jump right into
Let's talk to Lance.
Okay, Lance, would you mind real quick just introducing yourself?
Sure. I'm Lance Shaner, the co-owner of Omega Yeast Labs in Chicago, Illinois.
And tell us a little bit about Omega.
Sure. We were founded in 2013 by myself and my business partner, Mark Schwartz. I am a microbiologist by training. I have a bachelor's and a PhD in microbiology, as well as a law degree, but that's, I guess, another story. And ended up, I guess, as a disgruntled lawyer, which there are a lot of out there. Just had a kind of a fit of inspiration after talking to one of my colleagues at the law firm who was starting a brewery. So it just kind of sparked this idea to start a yeast lab, and Mark was one of my colleagues at the firm as well, and had a lot of kind of more of an entrepreneurial bent to him, so we kind of just started talking about the whole idea and launched it. So from conception to actually having a space and starting to produce was about a 5-month period.
That's pretty fast.
At the end of 2012. Yeah, it was. It happened quick, and I think it was a reflection of a couple things that we were excited about the idea and really didn't want to be lawyers.
Do you think there are more disgruntled lawyers are going to open up yeast labs?
Hopefully not yeast labs, but there are. We do see it in breweries. I'm pretty sure there's a good contingent of former lawyers that have started breweries. That, I mean, we can hear it in some of their names. I think we work with like Legal Remedy and and Banging Gavel, things like that.
Oh, that's cool. Should we jump right in then?
Yeah, let's jump right in.
I know this is a little weird, but do you have a favorite yeast, one that you like better than all the other ones?
I mean, I could probably narrow it down to favorite yeast by style.
Okay.
So just kind of as like an all-purpose, pretty neutral ale strain that you can make, IPAs, stouts, porters, females. I like our British Ale 1. Just because it's very easy to use. It flocks nicely, works fast, not super strong flavors, but still has some character to it. So that's definitely my favorite for that. Lager strains, we really like the Byron Lager. It's just a very flexible lager strain. Our opinion, you can brew essentially any lager you want with it. Nice and clean. You can even ferment at higher temperatures, so you can move things along a little faster. So, it's perfectly happy in the mid-60s. We'll produce a great lager at those temperatures. And then as far as like a strain that can do ridiculous things, I guess there's the Kveik Strains. So Hornindal can get to really, really high ABVs. So if we want to do something incredibly high alcohol, we'd use that one. Voss is really great as just kind of like and we also like to say it's almost it can be a Chico substitute. So it's got a little bit of citrus orange character that plays really, really well with hops, except you can turn things around really, really quickly with it without too much fuss. So like I said, depends on kind of what I want to do as far as what my favorite is.
And this is why we wanted to talk to you, actually, is about the Kveik Strains. because it's 4,000 degrees outside, and usually people will be making saisons during the summer because of the heat tolerance of saisons, and phenolics are phenolics, and that's what you're going to get. But these Kveik strains are a game changer for sure. What exactly about them makes them different? I mean, why can they do what they do? And for people listening, the Kveik strains are Norwegian strains that can ferment up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So
right. I mean, so I would say the why is still kind of, in process, still trying to figure out, what the underlying genetics are that allow for them to have these traits. They probably have some differences in the way they, process esters, because they're not overly estery. They certainly don't make fusel, so it's not unreasonable to assume that whatever the genes and enzymes are involved in the fusel production pathway are different. Have different levels of activity or different types of activity, because they just don't seem to make appreciable levels of fusels like an English ale strain would do if you tried to ferment it at 90 or 95. So all the sequence information is out there. It's just a matter of kind of interpreting it and doing the experiments to show why it's got certain features. But that's going to take a while.
What makes them different from a usage standpoint then? We talked a little bit, you touched on the high temperature tolerances and the low phenolics and the ester production. Is there anything else that's really special about them, or is that like that in a nutshell?
That's a good nutshell for sure.
Okay,
but
great.
the speed at which they function, I think, is on the commercial side makes a profound difference in how breweries can go about planning their production. It can, depending on how you use them, you could literally double the output of your equipment, which is pretty profound, just because you can turn clean beers around so fast, and they make kind of unique flavors, but still very recognizable, just in the fact that they are POF minus. The ester profile might be slightly unique, but still recognizable. If we weren't talking about these strains and where they were, and people were just using them and putting out the beers, I don't think the consumer would bat an eye. I think a lot of it has to do with process, as far as what's exciting to brewers about them.
Now, when we first got them, and we were very excited about having a heat-tolerant strain that was fairly neutral, or at least had some pleasant esters, we thought that you just pitched them at pitching temperature, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and then let them ramp up to 90 degrees. And apparently that's not the best way to use them. So what's the best way to pitch any of the Kveiks?
Yeah, I would say if you did pitch them around that temp, they're probably, they're going to generate their own heat, but depending on how well insulated your vessel is, they're probably not going to make it to those temperatures. So, the easiest way to do it and the fastest and most effective is probably to aim to pitch around, 85 to 90, and then just let it climb from there. So then it's heat generation, again, depending on ambient and the insulation of your fermentation vessel, will probably climb it into the mid 90s, upper 90s, which is fine for them. Definitely it's those temperatures at which they act the fastest. You can use them even like a traditional ale strain. If you wanted, you could pitch them at 68, 70 and hold, with temperature control at those temperatures. But frankly, I like the simplicity of them, in that you don't need temperature control. So it's just so if you want something to turn around pretty quickly with pleasant results, you pitch hot and you don't temperature control them. Just let them go. Just don't fuss about it, like you have to do with a lager, where you're carefully maintaining it at 50 degrees and slowly ramping up, doing diacetyl rest. There's a lot of fussing and maintenance with a beer like that, and what I like about these, you just don't have to be fussy with them. So pitch them at 85 or 90 and let them rip.
Is there a different flavor profile if we were to ferment them at 65 degrees, like a regular ale strain, like a Chico strain?
We haven't noticed significant differences. I think just they're probably a little bit less estery at the lower temperatures, but they're still unique as far as their flavor profile. Slightly unique, again, try to make the point that they're not anything crazy. So yeah, just probably generally a little bit less estery, but that's the sort of thing I'd like to see at some point backed up by a machine telling us that that's the case, doing a GC reading on the same beer fermented at 68 versus 95 and actually see what the difference is. So,
and honestly, why would you pitch them at 65 degrees when there are other strains that need to be pitched at that, whereas these are great for this hot weather and hot fermentation, right?
That's kind of my position. Is obviously you can pitch them and use them at those temperatures, but that's not taking advantage of them. Pitching hot is where you're taking advantage of them. So, if you're not in a hurry, then that's fine. You can pitch them at the lower temperatures.
Awesome. Are there any styles that you feel each of these three strains work best with?
Generally speaking, we tell people that you can use them in any style that you'd use an English ale strain in, which is a lot of styles.
It's a lot of beer.
But as far as maybe certain styles that shine more than others, because it makes them easier, I think would be things like imperial stouts and barley wines. We've made a couple barley wines, a traditional I guess I wouldn't call it traditional. A barley wine that was like 16% alcohol that tasted amazing. The fruitiness really kind of complements that style, and you don't get the heat that you'd normally associate with those with ABV that high. Mm-hmm. So they end up being deceptively smooth and dangerously smooth. And we did a rye wine recently that I think was more in like the 11% range, but again, it was beautiful. I mean, just a little bit of spice from the rye, and the fruitiness was very complimentary. Mm-hmm. The recipe, it was really good. So I think styles like that.
Now, one question I've always wondered about these strains is, so you can pitch hot. It can reach terminal gravity in 3 days, depending on the original gravity, right? I mean, some of these just chew right through. But what about the maturation process? Do we still need to let it sit another week or two to absorb any off flavors, diacetyl, stuff like that?
No. Just to give an example, we did a collaboration with a customer of ours, Hailstorm Brewing in the south suburbs of Chicago, where the entire goal was to brew a double dry hop, double IPA, and have it in cans a week from brew day.
Oh.
And
Wow.
we did it. It's one of those things where if you didn't tell the consumer what they were tasting, like there's nothing amiss. It tastes like a double dry hop, double IPA, but they had it in a can and out in market a week after brew day. So they don't really need that much time to develop. That 16% barley wine I was telling you about before, at 48 hours it was essentially done. But at that point, it was definitely a little appley, seemed to maybe a little acetaldehyde. So that, we gave that another couple days. I think we drank that at 10 days, but honestly, we probably could have drank that before then. And 10 days still for a beer of that size is still a pretty fast turnaround. So they definitely seem to clean up. They do everything faster, so including the cleanup.
That's amazing. That's actually, I'm kind of a little stunned. Because these yeast commercially seem like a game changer. I mean, have you seen breweries respond well to this? I mean...
Yeah. It's been a process. We've been going, around the country talking to people about them. But yeah, we've had very good adaptation by pro brewers. There are some customers that use them as house strains. I think you'll see more people doing that given time, but it just takes a while, especially if people have been brewing for a long time. They're a little more stubborn about changing things, but newer brewers are certainly more adaptive and willing to try different things. So yeah, we've been very happy with how well they've been adapted.
If you can push a beer out in half the time and have it taste the same as if you were using a different English strain, of course you could fill tanks and get beer out a lot quicker, right?
Absolutely, and I think some brewers are seeing that and making equipment decisions based on it.
What's the history of the Kveik strains? And I like to mention to people that Kveik means yeast, right?
Yeah. Yes, it's one of the apparently like 5 or 6 words that they have for yeast in Norwegian. So it's one particular dialect. I think this is a kind of a little aside, I guess, related to the history, but if you read Lars' blog, which is how we discovered Kveiks, I think he had one entry talking about what they call them in Norway, and so Voss was the first farmhouse, or a farmhouse in Voss was the first one that he stopped at to kind of start learning about the history and how people were using these yeasts. and it was at that farmhouse brewery that they called it Kveik. So that's the name that he applied to these yeasts generally, all of these Norwegian farmhouse yeasts. And as he then started to visit other farmhouses, he discovered that they were calling them different things. So they had different words for yeast or for those types of cultures. So really, it's almost this kind of just accident of history that the world now knows them as Kveik, because that's the first place he stopped at. That's what they called it.
They could have been called
somewhere else.
Norwegian hot yeast or something, right?
Yeah, or I mean, some of the other words. I mean, people have a hard enough time pronouncing Kveik, but some of the other words were even, had lots of consonants strung together. So in some way, we're kind of lucky that that's the first place he stopped.
So how did you guys end up being the distributor for them?
I think it's been a good 4 years. I think it was 2015, pretty sure, that we first got wind of these through Lars' blog. So, I mean, our first when we started talking about, how the temperatures at which they were fermenting, we're like, this sounds ridiculous. And they're either making like beers of questionable quality in Norway, or these are very special yeasts. And we made it our mission to get a hold of some of these strains. So we actually reached out to Lars directly right then, and didn't get a response back from him. But he'd talked. I think he probably thought we were some crackpots or something at that time. But so he had been talking about how they were also submitting these strains to a yeast bank in the UK called the National Collection of Yeast Cultures, so the NCYC. And so he'd been depositing the strains there, so we reached out to the NCYC and got Hothead through them. That was the first one we got. If you're keeping score at home, that is the Stranda Kveik. If you read Lars' blog and are wondering which strain that is, but we at the time, again, nobody knew what these, brewing community really didn't know what these strains were, so that's why we kind of applied this cute name to it, to just kind of personify it a little bit. Since then, people have obviously come to know what these are and seek them out. So we've kind of stuck with their more traditional, geographical names. So Hornindal Kveik and Voss Kveik. But at the time, nobody knew what they were. So that's why we went with Hothead. But that was the first strain we got. So when we got it, we did a split batch, like 15-gallon batch that we split into 3 5-gallon fermenters and pitched at different temperatures. 68, 85, and in the 90s, fermented them out, sampled them, really could not tell much of a difference between them at all. They were all clean, not overly estery, no fusels. So that first batch convinced us that they were, pretty amazing, and that they would be readily adapted, because to put it simply, if you can make an IPA with it, it's going to be a popular strain, especially when you can shorten your fermentation times and all that. So we started commercializing it, and just slowly, people started adapting it and talking about it, and word of mouth spread and spread and spread. So brings us to today. Added a couple more strains along the way with somewhat different features. I mean, there are a lot of these strains out there. They have some subtle differences. I mean, we're still trying to work through the differences between them, but we feel like the 3 that we've got out there are a good kind of range of flavor profiles.
Will we see more Kveiks coming from you guys?
I mean, it's something we're going to keep playing with, but certainly if we find things that are different enough from the ones we've got, that have something else to offer, we would certainly offer them. But, we don't want to just put out 50 Kveiks just because. I mean, we want there to be a good reason to have more than we've got.
What experiments has Omega done with these Kveik yeast strains?
I mean, we've done hazies with them too, and we really like Voss, and I mean Hornindal works well too. Hothead's probably it's flocculent and kind of doesn't necessarily seem to hold haze to the same extent as the others, so maybe not as useful for that. We've made blonde ales to just try to get a sense of basically nothing else going on other than the yeast character. Made porters, we made stouts, we made barley wines. It depends on what our goal is, but sometimes it'll be the same strain with different temperatures. Sometimes it's just the all 3 Kveiks fermenting the same wort. There's a number. We have thirsty employees too, so we use them quite a bit, and the experimental purpose varies.
What about drying them? From what I hear, that they can be dried by a home brewer or by a brewery. Is that something you recommend? And if so, how does one go about that?
It's not actually something we have experimented with. I mean, we are set up to produce liquid yeast, so it'd require a lot of equipment. But yes, it certainly is something you can do at home. So if you were to collect the yeast from your batch and decant the most beer you can off of it, so you've got your thick yeast slurry. I think I've seen people that will lay it out on like parchment paper and put it on the absolute lowest setting of the oven that they can to just draw off all the moisture, and then crumble up the pieces of yeast and keep them in the freezer. And I mean, this isn't something we've done ourselves, but I've seen reports of that on the internet, and it seems to work.
I've seen a lot of homebrewers come into the store with crumpled up little pieces of parchment paper and trade them with each other. It's weird. I kind of wanted to know what was going on.
We're assuming it's yeast.
I was not assuming it was yeast.
How have you tried snorting what they're saying? Maybe that's not.
I attenuated quickly after I snorted that.
Yes. Yeah, they're very desiccation tolerant compared to other strains. This is kind of obviously that's how the Norwegians were actually storing them. But we're not set up for that. It would just add another step, to our process.
Right,
it certainly wouldn't make things any cheaper. Some of these strains they've actually found have no bacteria in them. And again, these are stored on like wooden rings hanging in a barn for a year. So it's just, it's almost mind-boggling that they could have pure yeast cultures under these circumstances. And I mean, we have some ideas on how that might be. It's that they ferment so rapidly, so the ABV level gets high quickly, and that is a preservative. So it will, that will probably keep bacteria at bay. The beers are generally hopped. That would help keep bacteria at bay. And then the drying, a lot of bacteria also won't survive drying process. So just the fact them hanging on these wooden rings and desiccating is something the yeast can tolerate more than the bacteria, so that probably helps as well.
Some badass yeast there, huh?
Yeah, no, they're amazing. And then one of the more interesting things I'd heard, so I was talking to people about these yeast in Milwaukee, and it sparked recall from this one home brewer who had read an article, I think in the New York Times, about cutting boards and how plastic cutting boards actually harbor way more bacteria than wooden cutting boards. And you wouldn't really think that. I mean, you'd just think of wood, absorbing lots of things and stuff growing on it. But when they actually look at the amount of the bacterial load on these things, there's way more on plastic than there is on wood. So the wood itself has almost an antiseptic quality to keep bacterial levels down.
Crap, I use plastic cutting boards. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. But hopefully you're cooking things that you're cutting up on it.
Doug, do you have any more Kveik questions?
No, I don't think so. Although I'm only going to use wooden cutting boards for my yeast from now on.
Yeah.
But
if I've affected anything, I've affected people's cutting board choice.
Thank you for that public service.
Yeah.
What I would like to talk to you about before we let you go, Lance, is one of the things that we really love about Omega is these hybrid strains that you guys have been doing. So far, we can get Saisonstein's Monster and we can get Gulo. I think those are the only two hybrids that are available for homebrew, right? Mm-hmm. Are you guys looking to do more of those? Because we really like them, and just tell us a little more about them.
So there will be more. We've got one in a fermentation trial right now. I mean, this is a very early step in the process. So as far as the hybrids one can produce, it's not endless necessarily, because some of these strains just won't go through this hybridization process. So as a result of the domestication of yeast that we've been putting them through for hundreds of years, some of them have lost the ability to kind of go through this sexual cycle that some yeast strains can do. So if you go out and find a wild Saccharomyces cerevisiae, they'll sporulate readily. So they create haploid versions, which is a single copy of their chromosomes in a spore that is more environmentally resistant, a little more resistant to drying, and can survive starvation for a longer period of time. And that process is helpful when it comes to mating them, because when they germinate out of this spore they're kind of ready to mate with another haploid cell to create a diploid cell, so 2 copies of the chromosomes. So you kind of have to be able to manipulate them through that process to create these hybrids. And even once you have hybrids, they're all going to be random combinations of their parental chromosomes. So then you've got to search through the progeny to find ones that have the properties you want. And that was kind of the story of the Gulo strain, is we were trying to create a highly attenuating non-phenolic version of the strain. So we crossed highly attenuating strain, French Saison, with Irish Ale, which happens to be one of these strains that can go through the process, but it's not phenolic. So the first generation of that hybrid is both phenolic and highly attenuating, pretty much like French Saison. But one of its 2 copies of the chromosome that it would have gotten would have been not phenolic. So then you have to basically make it go through the process again, sporulate, it'll segregate out its chromosomes and kind of mix and match them again. And then you let those grow up and then search through those for ones that are still highly attenuating, like the French, but have lost the ability to create the phenolics, like the Irish strain. So, weeded through these progeny until we found one that had the property we were looking for, and that resulted in what we call Gulo, which if you know your Latin, I'm sure you guys do, is the species and genus name for the wolverine, which is a very ravenous organism, and Gulo means glutton as well.
We wanted to say thank you very much for talking with us today.
Yeah. It's fun. Thanks for having me.
And we also want to say thank you for your great yeast and for for the game changing and all that stuff. You guys
all
are
the
kicking
work
ass.
you do.
Yeah.
You guys rock.
We love it.
Yeah.
And thanks for
great.
the playing cards at NHC. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see you, but those cards are great.
My 9-year-old loves them. We've played euchre many times.
Yeah, and I mean, you could get your inspiration for your next brew while you're gambling.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lance.
So thanks for your time. And next time you're in New York, man, drop by.
Absolutely will. Had a great time last time I was out there, and look forward to the next time I can make it.
That was a great interview, wasn't it?
That was awesome. Loving Omega. They one thing that we didn't actually mention was that they have a larger pitch than a lot of the yeast companies that are out there.
150 billion yeast cells?
Well, as they like to say, it's enough yeast mass for 1060, and what they feel will make a proper beer that has original gravity of 1060. And you can say it's 150 billion cells, but that's... I should have asked Lance about
exactly
that, but that's
accurate.
what he said.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
No, I counted them. There was 150 billion and one in one of the
bonus
packs. So yeah.
Yeast. In the past when I was brewing in the summer, I always thought I had to brew saisons, but he really opened my eyes to how this could help me make a fucking hazy IPA when it's 95 degrees and I have no fermentation.
Not just you, but everybody.
But everybody. Well, yeah. I mean, everybody. It also makes me want to run my own test and do a 3-batch with
different
temperature
temperatures,
pitching.
Different. I've done the pitch warm. I've done that, and it was amazing. The beer came out fantastic. It was complex. It was not hot, and was done in 3 days. 3 days. I threw it into a keg, carbonated it. We had a beer within a week.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
My alcoholism's going to go through the roof. If I keep doing that. It's great. Oh, by the way, one thing we should mention is we carry all these yeasts. We're not just talking to Omega and saying, get them somewhere else.
No, bitterandesters.com.
We got them all, man.
Got them all. We ship them, and when we ship, the best part is these yeasts can get hot when they ship. Can they? I wonder.
I don't. We ship with ice packs.
We ship everything with ice packs, and it's the next day in the 5 boroughs, which is pretty cool. Well, I think that's it for today.
That's it for today. This is episode 2.
Yay.
Yay, in the bag.
We've made 2. If you have we didn't get to any questions today. We've got a couple that we are working on the answers to that we got in the email the other day. But if you have questions that you want us to answer, feel free to drop them to us at questions@bitterandesters.com or John or Doug at bitterandesters.com.
Basically anything at bitterandesters.com, I'm pretty sure will get to us.
Yeah. Questions at bitterandesters.com.
That's the best one.
All right. Thanks.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, could I just get you to sing the ABC song?
A, B, C, D. I don't have to actually sing, do I?
No, you're good. You're good. No, we got.
E, F, G.
We're looking for level. We're good, my friend.
Okay.
We're good, my friend.
Okay.
We're good, my friend.